The Glories of Mary is one of my favorite books. It has a lot of stories in it that can be very helpful. I'm going to read two stories from the book that I think are interesting. The first story emphasizes the power of the Hail Mary, and how even a Hail Mary said without devotion can save one from hell. The second story is about how, just because God might give you a special grace in your life, that doesn't mean you're immune to His wrath. You still have to cut off grave sins and continue in your devotion to God and Our Lady. So now I'll read the first story about the power of the Hail Mary. In the year 1604, there lived in a city of Flanders two young students who, instead of attending to their studies, gave themselves up to excesses and dissipation. One night, having gone to the house of a woman of ill fame, one of them, named Richard, after some time returned home, but the other remained. Richard, having gone home, was undressing to go to rest, when he remembered that he had not recited that day, as usual, some Hail Marys. He was oppressed with sleep, and very weary, yet he roused himself and recited them, although without devotion and only half awake. He then went to bed, and having just fallen asleep, he heard a loud knocking at the door, and immediately after, before he had time to open it, he saw before him his companion, with a hideous and ghastly appearance. "Who are you?" he said to him. "Do you not know me?" answered the other. "But what has so changed you? You seem like a demon." "Alas!" exclaimed this poor wretch, "I am damned." "And how is this?" "Know," he said, "that when I came out of that infamous house, a devil attacked me, and strangled me. My body lies in the middle of the street, and my soul is in hell. Know that my punishment would also have been yours, but the Blessed Virgin, on account of those few Hail Marys said in her honor, has saved you. Happy will it be for you if you know how to avail yourself of this warning, that the Mother of God sends you through me." After these words, he opened his cloak, showed the fire and serpents that were consuming him, and then disappeared. Then the youth, bursting into a flood of tears, threw himself with his face on the ground to thank Mary, his deliverer, and while he was revolving in his mind a change of life, he hears the matin bell of a neighboring Franciscan monastery. "It is there," he exclaimed, "that God calls me to do penance." He went immediately to the convent to beg the fathers to receive him. Knowing how bad his life had been, they objected. But after he had related the circumstance which had brought him there, weeping bitterly all the while, two of the fathers went out to search in the street, and actually found there the dead body of his companion, having the marks of strangulation, and as black as coal. Whereupon the young man was received. Richard from that time led an exemplary life. He went into India to preach the faith, from thence passed to Japan, and finally had the good fortune and received the grace of dying a martyr for Jesus Christ by being burned alive. That was the first story, and it shows us how important the Hail Mary is for avoiding hell and getting out of mortal sin. No matter how deep you are in mortal sin, you need to say your Hail Marys and your rosary every day. The next story is different. Sometimes people get a special grace from God in their life, and they'll become prideful, and they'll think they're special and immune to God's wrath. This next story is about a man who received a special grace from God, but didn't cut off grave sins and continue in his devotion to Mary. In Magdeburg, a city of Saxony, there was a certain man named Udo, who, from his youth, had been so destitute of talent that he was the ridicule of all his schoolfellows. Now one day, being more than usually disheartened, he went to pray to the Most Holy Virgin before her image. Mary appeared to him in a dream, and said to him, "Udo, I will console you, and not only will I obtain from God for you abilities which will protect you from derision, but even talents that will make you admired. And moreover, after the death of the bishop, I promise that you shall be elected in this place." Thus Mary said, and thus it came to pass. Udo made great progress in the sciences, and obtained the bishopric of that city. But Udo was so ungrateful to God and to his benefactress for these favors, that he neglected all his devotions and became the scandal of the place. Whilst he was in bed one night with a wicked companion, he heard a voice saying to him, "Udo, cease this sinful pastime. You have sinned enough." At first he was irritated by these words, thinking it was just someone who was reproving him. But hearing it repeated a second and a third night, he began to tremble a little, lest it should be a voice from heaven. Notwithstanding all this, he continued in his wickedness. But after God had given him 3 months for repentance, behold, the punishment. One night a devout canon, named Frederick, was praying in the church of St. Maurice that God would remove the scandal which Udo gave, when, behold, the door of the church was burst open by a strong wind. 2 youths entered, with lighted torches in their hands, and stood on each side of the high altar. Then 2 others followed, who spread before the altar a carpet, and placed upon it 2 thrones of gold. Another youth, in military attire, followed, with his sword in his hand, and stopping in the midst of the church, cried, "O ye saints of heaven, whose relics are preserved in this church, come to assist at the great justice, which the sovereign judge is about to execute." At these words, many saints appeared, and also the 12 apostles, as assistants in this judgment. Lastly, Jesus Christ entered, and seated himself on one of these thrones. Afterwards, Mary appeared, attended by many holy virgins, and seated herself on the other throne at the side of her Son. The judge now ordered that the culprit should be brought forward, and he was the miserable Udo. St. Maurice spoke, and demanded, in the name of the people whom he had scandalized, justice for his infamous life. All present raised their voices and said, "O Lord, he merits death." "Let him die, then," said the eternal judge. But before the sentence was executed, see how great is the mercy of Mary. She, the kind mother, that she might not be present at that tremendous act of justice, left the church, and then the heavenly minister, who entered among the first, with his sword, approaching Udo, with one blow, severed the head from the body, and the vision vanished. The place was left dark. The canon, trembling, went for a light from the lamp which was burning under the church, and when he returned, saw the body of Udo, with head cut off, and the pavement all covered with blood. When daylight came, the people thronged the church, and the canon related the whole vision and the circumstance of that fearful tragedy. And on the same day, the wretched Udo, who was condemned to hell, appeared to one of his chaplains, who knew nothing of what had taken place in the church. The body of Udo was thrown into a marsh, and his blood remained for perpetual memorial on that pavement, which was always covered with a carpet, and from that time it became the custom to uncover it when a new bishop took possession of the church, that at the sight of such a punishment he might be mindful to lead a good life, and not be ungrateful for the graces of the Lord and his most holy mother. That was the second story, and it shows us the importance of cutting off grave sins and staying devoted to Mary. It also shows us how being given a special grace doesn't make us immune to God's wrath. Udo was given a special grace, but didn't cut off grave sins and continue in his devotion to Mary, so he was punished and sent to hell. The 2 stories are important to consider. The first story reminds us of the power of the Hail Mary, and how important the prayer is for those in sin. The second story shows us how we need to stay vigilant, continue in our devotion to Mary, and cut off grave sins.